All right, hello everybody. Okay, AI in action for Module 4, some essential features and what I like using this term a lot, but game changer. Yeah, just I spend 90% of my time working in one of these features that we'll talk about. So, what are we talking about today? We're going to cover kind of three things. First, I want to go over web search, an essential feature that you need to know about. And of course, if you watch some of the media that was in the module this week, you know about web search. Then we're going to set up a project and then kind of play around with that project in part three. So, two parts are dedicated to what I think is an essential workflow right now, and that's project. And why do I say right now? Because things change dramatically. If you would have asked me a month ago, what's an essential workflow? Projects, and projects are contained, most of the AIs have a project type format. Again, we'll go over that. But why am I even hesitant now? Because now I've actually moved on to something else called cowork. Now, we're not going to talk about cowork too much in this class. I will introduce it because cowork only becomes available when you are at the paid level, and that's kind of like the drawing line for this course is what we can do in the non-paid level. But projects is there, and that is great. Okay, so web search. Let's go on to web search. Let me new chat here. I was playing around with web search before shooting the video, and oh no, okay, there we go. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to make sure web search is off. Now, for each one of these, obviously, I'm in Claude right now. There's usually like a little icon bar located down here in this section. Let me try something new here. I got a new toy. Looks good. All right. All right, I got my highlighted cursor now for you guys. So usually right about in this area, there's for both GPT and Claude, there's a section where you can turn on and turn off web search. Now, let me make sure it's turned off in this case. Yeah, I have it turned off. Okay, so we're going to do a little test here. But why, um, why would you have it turned off? Well, if there's no reason for the AI to search the web for current content, I would turn it off. It could actually maybe kind of confuse things a little bit if you are doing something. Basic function. Let's say you're just you're editing a document. You're working on a document. You're not adding anything new. You're doing grammar. You're doing kind of logic flow, paragraph construction, that stuff. You don't need it on. Um, Even if you're um, working, going back and forth on an idea that doesn't require any current knowledge, no reason to turn it on. And again, in some cases, it might, well, definitely it will slow responses a little bit, but it could pull in information that you really don't care about. So, yeah, I guess there's some reasons to turn it off. But for the most part, you're probably going to be, spending maybe half your time with web search and then the half of the time just doing kind of the other stuff that just requires a very smart person who doesn't need current knowledge. All right. So we verified that I've got web search off. Let's go ahead and do a prompt here. And yeah, let's take a look at this. See if this works here. Let's see. What are the current nursing turnover rates in the United States? Now, again, I was using my whisper flow. I hardly type anymore. So whether it works with video or not, it wasn't, I think it worked last time, but making sure that works. But yeah, whisper flow is also huge for me. Okay, so let's see. Oh, let me clean that up a bit. All right, let's see what Claude has to say. Ah, brilliant, Claude. I love you so much. Okay. Claude actually threw out a warning to me. So right here, through mid 2025. Why did it say that? Recently data. So as we've talked about before, these large language models have a cutoff. So they when they have a model, think of it like a person, like a child. They go out, teach it everything. Go learn the world. They basically learn the world at that point in time. And then they cut off the model. They graduate. Basically, they graduate from PhD school. They get their doctorate and every doctorate, and then they walk away and they don't learn anything new. So this was great. I love the fact that it warned us that it had that in there. So you can see here again, that was great. Contextual elements. Um, Oh, and yeah, this knows I work for Mercy College, so I probably should I should have gone to my other model because the more that you talk to it, the more that it gets contextual with you. So remember that's also key. So is this for a specific project, something related to Mercy College's workforce pipeline, or BSMH, that's Bond Supported Mercy Health Planning? So. But here we go. We've got turnover costs based on that time, about 46 to $65,000. Significant. That's how much it costs because of turnover, hiring new RNs, etc. So let's say roughly 18 to 20% is what we're looking at. So that is the turnover rate. Wow. Peaked. Okay. What was happening in 2022? I don't know. Maybe some COVID was happening in there. All right. Now, let's do the same question. Okay. I'll copy that. And now we're going to turn on web search. Okay. So let's make sure it's turned on. I got the check mark. Some of them with GPT, I believe, has an icon that shows up on the bottom, which is it's a visual, like tells you, yep, web search is on. Here, I got to hit the plus button and make sure it's turned on. So little nuances there. Okay, so let's do my paste. You got it turned on. Now let's see what it does. Ah, and that they usually have some icon here that shows that it's pushing out to the internet. Look at this. Okay, so we're getting more precise information. There's the pandemic peak. Yeah. Rather than getting some of these generalized ranges, we're getting very specific information. So yeah, not dissimilar, obviously, because its cutoff was in 25, and this is only a year from now. But again, I'm getting more precise information. Also, notice the citations that are popping up in here. Okay, so and Becker's is I just happen to know that Becker's is a recognized industry publication. So these would be not, if your boss said, well, where do these numbers come from? You could actually cite those numbers. I probably actually would. If I was producing a professional memo, I would probably just maybe do some footnotes in there. I probably wouldn't do, APA or anything like that, but just so they know that I got this from recognized industry sources. All right, so there you go. Web search. When you want anything, if you're doing research, turn on web search. Even if you're researching, um, the Roman Empire, right? 2000 years ago. Well, what if there were some new discoveries that have happened in the past year, new interpretations of historical events that happened in the past year? I almost always, leave it on for most use cases, especially that research part. All right, let's pause for a second, and then we're going to go into my favorite. We're going to go into projects. Okay, now let's go into projects, and I'm probably going to mash a few things together in parts 2 and 3, but basically it's using projects, importing documents, and then web search turned on. In almost, well, not necessarily in all cases will you want web search turned on. It depends on, again, context and what you're doing, but let's get into it. Now you're going to notice projects is, I think it's also located on the side panel as well for GPT, but you have this section called projects. Now Gemini doesn't really have a projects, but they have something else that's pretty darn cool, and it's definitely part of my workflow, and that is it's called LM Notebook. We'll talk about LM Notebook next week, but similar but different. So let's take a look at projects though. Okay, so we're going to start a project. Click on that. And you can see here I have a lot of projects. I live in projects. I organize my life in projects. So once you see the power of projects, you can literally organize your professional and personal life within these specific contextual projects. All right. So we're going to start a new project, kind of covered by my picture here. Let me just move the circle over there a little bit. All right. Start a new project. Let's give it a name. And let's see, we're going to continue with our theme, retention research. I think we'll stick with that. Retention research. Okay. Now, um, down here, you can just say, it says this has no effect on the model, on the AI. It's just for your own knowledge. Uh, a, a project that I'm using for retention research within healthcare. Okay. All right, so whatever you want for your own knowledge base here, great project. Now, let me remove my picture altogether here. I want you to see the full beauty of this panel. And they all have the features within GPT and Claude, very similar. Um, so memory, again, leave that as is, nothing to do with memory. You're going to see memory build out as you interact with it. It's great because then it knows. I mean, it's like, again, a working partner. And then it's going to have really tight memory to this specific project. So that's what's cool. You don't get bleed over. Like when you're talking with the large language model, just in regular chat, and you have memory turned on, which I would recommend. Um, you can go and you can delete if you get something weird. If somebody else uses your account, this has happened to me. Someone else. I was showing it. This was in the early days of memory, and they were using that. And then the large language model, it gets confused. It doesn't know if that's your memory conversation or someone else. Now, nobody uses my large language models. It's just me. So it's very contextualized to me. I have memory turned on, so it's not an issue. You can go in and actually edit memories. So if there's something like, no, I don't work at Applebee's because maybe someone who was playing around, maybe you were showing them AI and they said they worked at Applebee's, all of a sudden it thinks you work at Applebee's. You can actually go in and delete that memory. So, and you can turn them off altogether. If you're freaked out about it, turn it off altogether. But if you get one thing from this class, um, or one of the things from this class, it's context. The more context the AI has, the better the results. The more context about yourself, your problem, your research, your strategies, whatever you're doing it. The more you can give it about the situation, um, the better it is. Remember, it's blind. It can't see anything. It can't feel or hear unless what you specifically say or the images that you specifically show it. So the more that you give it, the better, richer answers that you have. Okay, there's I'll get off my soapbox on memory. Instructions. Here you can give it very specific instructions on how you want it to behave in this particular context. So let's see, we're doing a retention research. I'm going to give it some, I'd probably want to work on this actually for a while. So I'd probably want to iterate I would go into a regular chat mode with the AI and I would iterate and get these instructions super tight. These are going to be super loose right now. So I'd always go back and forth and get them very tight, but I'm just going to kind of talk off the cuff here. So, all right, you're going to help me in creating a research document that will help with identifying retention strategies and overall pros and cons and costs, etc., for healthcare employees in a variety of roles within healthcare, not just bedside, but also administration. The output will be professional, not academic, but professional, something that could be shared with my supervisors. I would like you to use, when we use a source, please provide references at the end of our writing of those sources used. Okay, now that's kind of loose here, but I would tighten that up a lot. Okay, but we're going to go for that for time's sake here. Going to save these instructions, but you definitely want to give it some instructions here. Now, could you still get those results? Yep, you could still get them through the regular project chat, but you're saying it, maybe every time you're saying, I want this not academic. I want this in a professional tone, or, don't use contractions, or, don't use dashes. Tell it, please tell it never to use dashes. Okay. That is a dead giveaway that someone's using AI. And I expect everybody to be using AI. I expect them to be using it smartly. And if you are having dashes in your output, it's called an M dash. Those long dashes are called M dashes, and the short ones are called N dashes, EM or EN dash. Tell them, don't put that in there. I don't know why people have speculated why AI does this. No one quite knows. People did it in writing beforehand. And of course, the AI was trained on that. But for some reason, both Claude and GPT love it. So, and I used to love dashes too, but now I don't use them. So there you go. All right, we've got our instructions. Now, this is the power. Files. Okay, this is where you have like different little chunks of your life. I've got a project, strictly like for my mortgage or my finances, where I've loaded actual mortgage, um, statements for my mortgage payments. I've loaded it right into that. Just dropped it right in there. And we can chat about mortgage rates, when it makes sense to refinance, all kinds of cool stuff. Now, could I have done that in a regular chat? Yes, but this exists. It's always there, and I go back to it, frequently. So open your mind to what you can do with these projects. It truly, it is like, an OS, an operating system. We have Windows for PCs, and we have Mac OS for Mac. This is like an OS for life. You can have all of these files. You saw I had a bazillion projects when you saw my project space, technical stuff that I use at work, personal stuff. Yeah, it's great. So there you go, projects. Now let's go into the files. So I have a file here that I found, healthcare, employee retention, just a kind of a general document here and strategies, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to load that in here. Simply drag and drop. Doink. You can have, as you can see here, there is a capacity. You can have a lot of files in here. So what is the AI going to do? So the AI is going to now heavily reference these um, these files that you have. It's going to be part of that magic word context in all of its responses. So let's go ahead and start doing some chats here. Oh, get my chat box back up. Yeah, sorry, go back in again. All right, there we go. Don't know why that little glitch happened where the chat box kind of disappeared. Okay, but we got my document. I've got my instructions. Great. Of course, I can edit those. All right, let's just say, that document was pretty long. I think it was 15 pages. I'm just going to say, hey, produce a one-page summary of the document that I provided you, and make sure that you reference it. Now, using the files in your resource files, please create a brief one-page summary that I could give to my manager about some of these ideas. Notice I'm using Opus 4.6. This is the big boy thinking model. In general, just default to whatever the highest model that you can get. For me, the difference between, well, I'll let it think here. The difference between Sonnet and Opus, a few seconds. I can wait 15, 20 seconds for a great answer. It's not killing me. Um, if for some reason speed's necessary, Sonnet's great for speed and it's pretty good. Oh, look at this. I set a document, so it's giving me a docx. It's giving me a Word document. How great is that? I didn't even specify that, but that's great. So let it go through its thing. It's going to give me a Word document. If it didn't, let's say I just put out the raw output, then I would be one more prompt. Hey, can you please put this in a PDF or please put this into a Word doc? Let it go through its thing. Looks like it's about finishing up. But again, projects are just a great way to organize everything in AI. You could even, so let's say the classic use case of making a new, oh my God, look how beautiful that is. Do you realize, yeah, I've been doing this, uh, you know, I was doing AI. I mean, I was actually using GPT before I even knew it because there was a product out there that was using GPT in it. And I was using that before it became publicly known. But anyhow, when GPT came out, I heard bubbles about it, internet chatter about, oh my God, there's this amazing AI, thing that came out. And then, by the time it reached me, and I said, oh, I better really check this out. It was about 3 weeks it had been out on the web. And I was off on winter break and decided, about 4 weeks now, and I got into it. And it was, if you would, I wish I would have screenshot the website for ChatGPT when it first came out. It was really, how do I say this nicely? It was janky. It was really like, it looked like it was home brewed. It was just like, but as soon as I played with it within 15 minutes, I realized like the whole world had changed. So I've been doing this forever and always being amazed, and it just still amazes me I mean, even more so now with the speed of change. But look at this document. If you noticed, remember the canvas or the window pane or whatever you want to call this second side here is it really essential for iteration going back and forth. It popped it up in there automatically. Beautiful. I mean, how long would it take you to create this? In the world 5 years ago, this would have been, I mean, to get it nice and get your information and do the research, it would have taken um, a full day for sure. And this layout's beautiful. Like, this is amazing. So um, now notice that it's pulling from that source that I had. So it pulled directly from that source, and I love how it put it right down here. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Um, and then of course you can download this and then turn it into your boss, and people doing this versus what another employee is going to turn in. It's just a world of difference. Now, I feel pretty confident in how we locked it in. Um, we could verify this information. I think you're going to find out when you dial it in correctly. You have a source document. You tell it to do that. You tell it to source it down here. The hallucinations have been greatly reduced. As long as you do those techniques and you even if worst case scenario, you just tell it, use only current data, cite that data. If you wanted to, you could even have it do APA format. You could have it do AP. It does APA format really good, and with the citations, with the reference page, and you can go back then and change and check all those references, just to be on the safe side. So, also, again, long story short, check your references. Let's take a look at some other things here with the add-ons. Web search, of course, we had it turned on. There might be some cases where you'll turn off web search within your projects. Style, we have that prompt in there. If you remember, we put that prompt. We wanted a certain style, kind of business oriented. You can play with some of these. You can create your own and edit styles. I find it easier to put it in the instructions to tell it how to behave. But again, great, cool little things here. Deep research, that's a whole other aspect. I'm not sure if we did a demo on that. I'll have to double check and see if we did a demo in module 2. We'll talk about deep research. If I haven't talked about it, I'll make sure we'll bring that up in a video later. Um, that's also a wonderful tool. That's kind of an agentic tool. So the you're going to hear, and I'm actually because the changes are happening so fast. This course is actually adapting over the 7-week run. When I conceived of the course and got it approved through our curriculum committee, it was over a year ago. Agents were out there, but they weren't being used. Agents are going to definitely the future. So and we will talk about agents in the final couple of modules because you have to. You're going to be your job in the future will be, well, the future is like, I don't know, next month, we'll be conducting agents. The agents will be the white collar workers that will do the work. You'll be the conductor of the agents and funneling them. Whether you're working with people speculate, you'll get 10 agents, you'll have 100 agents, but those would be basically like an FTE, like a full-time equivalent, or even more because they work 24/7 and they don't take a break and they don't get sick and they work constantly. But where was I going with this? Research, I think they call it deep research with OpenAI is one of the first like agentic features that they had. And again, I'll double check and see if we haven't gone over that. I'll do a quick touch on that. Definitely before the class opens. It is a nice tool to have for sure. But all right, so we've gone over a lot here with projects. Ultimately, let's go ahead and close this. And we talked about uploading files, putting in your custom instructions in here. Files, give it what? Context. Make sure you're giving it context. And then it will dial into whatever those documents are. Just for the heck of it, let me just go to my project so you can kind of see some of my detailed projects. Nothing like real workflow here and just winging this as I'm shooting the video. Okay, so one of the things that I'm doing is I'm hiring a senior research analyst. So we've got a job position open. And with that, then I uploaded the job description there, and we've been going back and forth about about creating that. So, and your instructions are to help me coordinate the process of selecting a senior research analyst. This process will consist, um, search and screen interview team, blah, blah, blah. So that's one reason. Let me see if I got a more beefy project here. Yeah, so IPEDS, that's a big project. So IPEDS is an external reporter that the college has to give them. It's like federal government. They want information from the college, and we have to give it to them multiple times a year in certain formats. So I've created an IPEDS consultant. Act as my expert IPEDS consultant and compliance mentor. Um, we I've loaded tons of essential, and these are some really large documents in here about IPEDS. So it's got its bookshelf. It refers to that. Could it extract it from the internet? Yeah, it could, but I wouldn't be so sure that it would be pulling it, with a lot of strength. If it's in my files, I know that it's going to pull very strongly from that information. If you have anything that you are working on or studying for, and that's another thing we'll talk about. I tell my daughter, who is a sophomore in college, I tell her, if you're studying for something, you want to use projects. You can load chunks of the textbook in here. You could talk about it. You could have it quiz you. You could have it go back and forth. It is great for that. Because for example, okay, if you're doing a quiz or a midterm at school, the instructor is going to pull from what? They're going to pull from the textbook. Maybe they got some PowerPoints. They're going to pull from that. You could put the PowerPoints, the handwritten notes, your textbook, if you can scan it, get a PDF if you have a physical textbook, get it digitized somehow. There's 9 million ways to digitize a book, even if I'm using air quotes, you can't see me, even if it's kind of locked down. You can screenshot pages as long as you can get them digitized and put them into your file area. Then you got a perfect tutor, mentor, teacher who's going to teach you on those subjects. Okay. And quiz you and create cheat sheets and mind maps and all that other stuff. And then I'll leave with this last piece. I talked about Notebook LM. Projects does a really good job at that, like maybe a 90. I give it a grade of A minus. Notebook LM for that specific use case, learning something new, nothing better, nothing better. And we'll talk about Notebook LM in the upcoming module. So it's kind of like projects, but a little bit different. Now, everybody's like, Chris, what should I do? Which one should I use? I'm like, well, it depends on the use case. If you're just doing normal work, you're going to be living in projects. If you're studying for something and you need very strict adherence to what you tell it, Notebook is the strongest thing I've ever seen on that. So, but there you go. Kind of rambling here. Play around with projects, have fun with them. I hope that you really incorporate those into your workflow, not just for this course, but everything that you're learning, everything that you're doing. It is definitely, it is like the operating system for life. You can have all these little chunky little blocks of projects for all kinds of different things. So, all right, so there you go. That's it for this week, guys. We'll check in with you next week on our next AI in action. Thanks.